French cars and working are not two words that really ever go in a sentence together. But what about the times where French cars did work? Before we start, sip of Yorkshire's finest, and we're going to hop into a DeLorean. We're going to take a stride over to the 1930s, where Citroen had introduced their traction Avant, which was a model that carried on for about 20 years, so pretty long production run. And in that production run, we saw a lot of firsts. We saw the first mass-produced front-wheel drive car, first mass-produced semi-monocoque car, which wasn't unheard of at the time, but it was certainly a rarity that makes a car, you know, a notable model in the Citroen lineup. This really set the stride for French cars for a long time, up until the late 90s, I would say, but we'll learn all about that in today's video. Before the big three Germans, Audi, Mercedes, and BMW, made their cars easier to get into, more reliable. Look, they introduced some cheaper models. You had the A3, you had the A-Class, and the 1 Series, and people just didn't see the appeal of a French car anymore. Now we're going to travel back again, or technically forward, to 1940, where Citroen had introduced another model, which didn't introduce many firsts, but it was sort of a more accessible car. The 2CV, which looked like a snail that had been run over by an old car tire. It was not a very attractive car, to be honest, and I'm a massive Citroen fan. It had a very unconventional feature where you pulled the gear stick out of the dashboard and twisted it to change gear. So, you know, anyone coming out of a regular car had no idea how to drive it. And they also had a specially designed suspension system, from what I've read up, which as you turn, it's sort of supposed to keep all the wheels on the floor, so you've always got grip. If you've ever seen a photo of a Citroen or a video of a Citroen 2CV, or even driven a Citroen 2CV around a corner at any speed, you will know that they're not made for going around corners. It's like driving porridge upside down on the moon. The quirkiest variant of the 2CV, and my favorite variant of the 2CV, is the Sahara edition. I don't know if it would be called an edition, but the Sahara variant, which had, and I'm not kidding, 2 engines, 2 gearboxes, 2 fuel tanks, and they were completely separate. So 2 separate axles that didn't know each other existed. And that was the best way that Citroen thought that they could do a 4x4 in the 2CV chassis, which is interesting, to say the least. These cars were mainly used for oil prospecting in North Africa. I can almost hear the American choppers now invading and looking for all of the models of the Sahara left, but there's probably about 2 left. So they're not going to get very far. 1950, the American dream, the baby boom, and all that good stuff in between. However, if you were French, or if you liked French things, you might be considering something else. I'm going to completely butcher the name of this, but let's try Facel Vega. The car of the people, if you were a rich celebrity, I suppose, in the 1950s. I mean, there was that Ringo Starr had one. Pablo Picasso, if you're a bit artistic. Sterling Moss, if you like to race cars. Frank Sinatra. And also Albert Camus, if you're a philosopher who said bad things about the wrong people. And that's just a whole other story for another video, to be honest. The Facel Vega. Wow, what a car. It used American engines, so technically all the Americans that drove it, they were driving a car of their people. The range went from a puny 4.5 litre V8 when the car was first introduced, and increased drastically up to a 6.28 litre. I think they were a Hemi V8, so they were sourced from like the Chrysler Dodge Corporation. You know, all those rich people, all the meetings in the public eye, yachts, crashes, the Beatles, you know, the Beatles, massive band, but the company couldn't control the finances, and that resulted in it shutting down, and we don't have any more Facel Vegas. And I think there was like not a lot made. I'll put up on screen how many there were made, but it was in I think it was in the hundreds anyway. Now there's one less because that bloke crashed it. He crashed it. I'd just like to take a small brief moment to thank today's sponsor, Wilson Detailing, the premium detailing studio in southwest Scotland. Look, it's a non-biased opinion, and this isn't the uniform I'll be wearing for work tomorrow. Now into the 60s. Drugs, campers, and people going to beaches with no clothes on. Does not sound like a fun time, does it? And 2 seconds. Oh wait, no, I'm supposed to be talking about cars, not pop culture references. The Citroen DS! A beautiful car with its white tin top. Where is it? Did you catch what I said there? Tin top? Nope, it's fiberglass. That's the answer to the question I just asked. So technically, it's part Reliant Scimitar. Reliant Scimitar. You'll get that reference in a couple months' time on this channel. Some other facts about the DS include the engine being pushed that far into the body that I'm pretty sure it created a black hole, which meant that we could actually crawl through it and see an entire different planet in there. It was that, like this. They also, of course, had the hydro pneumatic suspension, which was famous in Citroens at that time. And technically, it made it all the way up to, I think, 2010 in the Citroen C5, but I'm not entirely sure about that. And I know it was introduced in the 50s, and it technically wasn't even the first on the DS, but the DS was the first to have it on all 4 wheels, but it was also still in the 50s. But for the purposes of this video, it was 1960, bang on. And it was just gorgeous. It had its big, high-mounted rear tail lights. You know, the front headlights were encased in glass. Like, obviously they were encased in glass, but they flowed with the body lines of the car in the later ones. And they were quite, you know, they just looked elegant and classy. And they also, I believe, they were the first car to have turn-in headlights when you turn the wheel. I'll put a clip in so you can see what I mean, but it's pretty cool. You know, screw your Audis that have that nowadays. Citroen were doing it flaming 70 years ago. Okay, and now we jump forward to the 70s, where it seemed like the French had really hit their stride. And we had the Citroen CX. Beautiful car. Single spoke steering wheel. Awesome. But the interior, while similar, was not quite that of the GSA. The GSA was an car. Pop a photo, right? You'll see what I mean. The speedo intercometer are in glass cases with what looks like liquid inside and on a revolving basis to show you your speed and revs. There's 2 big nobules hanging off the side of the gauge cluster, which are for like your headlights and wipers and starting a seance, maybe, probably. That last one was actually a lie, but it wouldn't surprise me with the French. There's probably like candle mounts in the boot and everything for it, so you never know. The GSA was also a family car, but it also featured Citroen's hydro pneumatic suspension as well. It's going to be a running theme in this video with the hydro pneumatic suspension, because the first car we mentioned, the traction Avant, actually had it as well in the early 50s, just on, I believe, probably, I don't know, I'm not even going to make it up, I'll just tell you on screen. And it was that good that it actually got licensed out to other manufacturers, because it wasn't Citroen's invention, but Citroen made it and produced it, so it was a joint effort. And it was licensed out to Rolls-Royce, which is cool, but it was also licensed out to the Challenger 2 tank. So, like, you know, you could be over in another country with Citroen suspension on your tank. Now tell me that's not the coolest thing ever in the world. Okay, now you may be wondering why I'm missing out cars, or I'm skipping over key facts, or I'm just, you know, skipping over your favorite car. Maybe your favorite car is a Renault 4 GTL and I've skipped over it. I'm very sorry. That's because this is my video and I'll talk about whatever I want to. The other part of it is I know I haven't been, but I kind of want to be covering cars that kind of go under the rug, get brushed away, and aren't really in the spotlight anymore. I know the 2CV and DS and all that is, but you know, people in America might not know, or other countries that never got these cars. So I'm trying to do some more sort of, not super informative videos, just sort of fun for them, so that they can sort of think, oh, well, maybe I'll go do some more research on that car or this car, and maybe, you know, we can get more French car fans. Okay, now we're back in the 80s. Citroen is still making the CX, remember that single spoke steering wheel and the world's tallest roof. Although I'm just being told now that that was only for Jeremy Clarkson and didn't make it to production. Shame. Anyways, we have the Renault Espace, first gen Renault Espace. And it's the first European car anyway that's sort of recognized as an MPV. It was also up there with being the first MPV. It was originally a PSA development, so Peugeot Citroen, but it was sold off to Renault as Peugeot didn't really see a future in it. Sure, they're regretting that decision now. But we did get the Zara Picasso, which makes up for it, because that's just, in recent times, the coolest Citroen ever made. And the Espace also led on to something else which is pretty cool, which probably should be mentioned in the 90s section of this video, but I'm going to mention it now because I'm too excited. The F1 Espace, which everyone's probably seen the Drive Tribe video on that car. Unbelievable. 800 horsepower, mid-engine V10 minivan with the seat still in the back by the engine. That's cool. I want one, but I'll likely never ever even see one unless I go to France. Renault, hit me up. I'll leave that car with you because it's just so cool. The 80s also brought us other oddities too, such as the Alpine GTA V6, with its weird window structure at the back, but still cool. And mid-engine layout. It was supposed to compete with, you know, the likes of your Porsche 944 and your Lotus Esprit, but it never really caught on, and they always sold better, which is a shame because they were supposed to be really good cars. And yes, I'm reading the notes off my screen. Do one if you care. They still had plenty of power from the V6, you know, gave a lot of cars a run for the money. And actually, local to me, about an hour away, there was two sitting rotten on the driveway. They've gone now. If I've got photos on my phone, I'll pop them on the screen for you. But, you know, Alpine has come back now. We have the new A110, which is a pretty good car. Sadly, only automatic, but we'll gloss over that. And it's a brilliant rival to the 718 Cayman. I would still likely take a 718 Cayman, but there might still be a future for Alpine. Who knows? They have just actually done that new Renault 5 as well, but what's that? The Alpine A31? Is it A310? Don't know. It's a car. It's pretty cool though. And now we're in my favorite decade of French cars, the 90s, because we had awesome stuff. We had Saxos, 106s, first generation Clios. We had all the Xantia V6 Activas, everything that made French cars cool. But there was one car that stood out. When I was doing my research and I was seeing unusual cars that people might not have heard of, the Venturi 400 GT. I've had to write down some facts. So, it was the fastest French production car of its time, 180 mile an hour, 408 horsepower, 0-62 in 4.1 seconds, and it was a twin-turbo V6, so they're already seeing how everyone just wants a V6 with 5 billion turbos on it. And in my opinion, I'm not even just saying this because it's French, it is one of the best, if not the best looking supercars of the 90s. I absolutely love it. Sure, it's pretty Ferrari-esque. It's got the F40 wing and the F40, you know, front wheel arch bits. I don't care. It looks awesome and I want one, but I'll likely never find one for sale. Never mind have the money to buy one. But I hear you ask, what about the interior? What about the things that French people do the best on a car? Well, it was pretty basic actually. It had 3 gauges to tell you all your different temperatures and battery voltage and everything. And you know, you could option it with wood trim, 5-speed manual gearbox, just your general supercar things. There wasn't a baguette maker in the glove box, or there wasn't a frog farm under the steering wheel in a little cubby hole. I am sure the Renault 5 would have had that, but not the Venturi 400 GT. And that's sad. It did have big 5 spokes though, and they look cool. Now, what else was happening in the 90s? Well, Peugeot and Citroen had come together, and we got a pretty special car. Citroen Saxo. Yeah, that's a car. VTS 1.6 16 valve. I have one. It's on the channel. and I love it. It's the best car ever made on planet Earth. Then there was also the 106 GTI, but they're for the wrong uns. Saxo is where it's at. Another quick side note, the Xantia Activa V6. V6, front-wheel drive, manual, awesomeness, family car technically. Active anti-roll bars by using the hydro pneumatic suspension, and it pretty much eliminated body roll. It was something like 30 years on the Moose test that had held the record, and it's only just recently been beaten by something, which is awesome. What about the 2000s? Renault has a lot to say and a lot to answer for in the 2000s, because we got the Aventine, which was a two-door, no B-pillars, V6, manual, front-wheel drive, minivan-ish thing, marketed towards the children of the Espace, the children who grew up in an Espace and wanted something youthful, so would buy an Aventine and not a Clio. You would think they'd buy a Clio, wouldn't you? No, they're gonna buy an Aventine with the heaviest doors ever on a production car. I'm making that up, but they probably I think they weighed like 60 kilos each. They had to have 2 hinges. They came off. It was crazy, and I have no idea why it did that. It was supported by 1 hinge, but it had like a dual hinge on it. It was pretty cool, actually, to be fair. I don't know how it passed through Renault's, research team, and they were like, yep, this is a good car. But it did. And it wasn't a good seller, and I don't really think it was a good car. It was unique, but don't think it was a good car. There's literally nothing I can say about the Aventine to make it make sense. It just didn't. Just like the Velsatis, which also didn't make sense because it was a front-wheel drive V6 executive hatchback made to compete with the likes of the only other car in its segment, the Vauxhall Signum, or the Opel Signum, depending on where you're from. There were 2 cars in the segment, and both of them failed, and we haven't seen a return of that segment since. The Velsatis was built on the Espace platform, but was supposed to be a hatchback for businessmen who went to work meetings on a Monday and were happy on a Monday. Can you believe it? I can't. Because the wackiest car that they did, in my opinion, is the Clio V6. What is the Clio V6? The Clio V6 is a Renault Clio from the early 2000s with the rear seats taken out and a big V6 put in its place. Rear wheel drive, manual again, and also was one of the most renowned spinny outy into a hedge cars that I've ever seen. I think every single auto tester that drove one spun out at some point on the track. It was crazy. I want one so bad. They are so cool. And just jumping back to the Velsatis, I have no idea what Renault thought they would have in this market. It was made over 8 years, which is 8 years too long. They made sold, should I say, just shy of 62,000 models, which sounds like a lot, but it's not at all. Especially when they lost 19,000 euros per car. And now we hit the rather unfortunate time of the 2010s. We'd had a recession. No, it didn't help. France. They gave us approximately 0 interesting cars with 0 interesting features. Everyone was buying Germans. They were buying silver. And I struggle to talk about this car. Nardo Grey. I'm going to throw up. I'll be right back. Now that that's out my system because it's the worst color ever and I hate it, we can get back to the video. France just weren't trying to innovate anymore. They'd given up. They went into 2008 not working anyway and decided, yes, we will quit making good cars. They gave us the Peugeot 308, which was the most boring looking car ever on planet Earth. What? I have nothing to talk about any of these cars. The Renault Captur, rubbish. The Peugeot 308, rubbish. The 407 was alright, but it was still boring. There was just nothing of any interest in 2010 at all for anyone to make a video on. We got I don't even. This wasn't even 2010. I don't think. When was this? Literally bang on 2010. But that car came out before 2010, so it doesn't count. Now it's a 2000s one, which is where they made cool cars. 2010 gave us dross like the Capture. Who drives around in a Renault Capture? I'm probably offending every Capture owner in the world, but I don't care. We had the Clio RS, which was a brilliant car, but we didn't get a manual gearbox in it. So who cares? It's a little hatchback. It should have been a manual. Sure, we got the Megane RS. It had a manual and managed to set a Nürburgring time. Probably the only interesting car to come out of France between 2010 and 2020. End of. And now we move into the present day. We've got brilliant cars, brilliant looking cars, the Renault 5, the Alpine A110, the Citroen Hemi, and that is it. Nothing else. And even those cars, the Hemi is probably the best out of them. The others haven't been done. It's an electric hatchback. Okay, it looks like a Renault 5, which is very cool. It's a very cool car, and I probably have one, but they've not innovated on it at all. It's just an electric hatchback, and that's now being passed on to the new Nissan Micra and the new, I think the Zoe, probably, if they even still make that car anymore. It was rubbish anyway. Citroen make about 75 different versions of the C3 and C4 Aircross. I don't even know if they still make them cars anymore, but I don't really care anyway. I've not done any research for this. I've just went into my head and thought of the most boring cars I could think of, because they're not giving us anything interesting. Everything's got a 1.2 hybrid or fully electric. You know, they're putting 1.2 hybrids in a 5 million ton SUV, which is made of cheese. Who cares? Nobody. You know, they're scared of just not making, I don't know, probably making money anyway, but they're just scared of doing something wrong, making a mistake, and then it can't be passed on to the 5,000 other sub brands you've got, like Alfa Romeo and Alpine and Nissan and all that rubbish that comes from Stellantis. I'm a French fan. It might not sound like it, but the rest of this video has hopefully been a portrayal of my passion for French cars. But it's just sad because we don't get anything cool anymore. We don't get cool suspension. We don't get cool interior features. We don't get anything unique. It's all just SUVs that are painted grey, apart from the Renault 5, which is a hatchback that you can get like yellow and green, which is pretty cool. And the new Renault 5 Turbo thing looks pretty sick, but they're £2 billion, so what does it matter? Rant over, which is all that last paragraph has been. My closing remarks: I love French cars. Always will, always have done. They were truly wacky, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Perfect cars. Nowadays, I just don't care for them. But that's my thoughts on French cars. Hopefully you learned something new. If you did, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And let's see if we can get any more wacky cars from a relatively wacky country.